Live. Here I am, folks. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I want to first and foremost let you know that I don't know what I'm doing. Let's see. Click here when live for stream info, viewer counts, and more. Why not? Let's see what that's all about. Um, so, I'm Sherry Harmel. I founded a magazine a few years ago called Extraordinary Women, specifically geared towards women 50 plus, that evolved into this podcast, and actually wrote a book called Design Your Fabulous Next Chapter. So, all of our work here is about your next chapter and how to, what do you do with the next chapter? The next chapter of most of us when we retire from our formal careers. We've got 20, hopefully 20, 25, maybe even 30 years where it's not like it was for our parents from the standpoint that, they figured they had 10 years and they all retired and went to Florida and, had umbrella drinks and planned out their next get together. In our cases, hopefully, it lasts much longer than that. And so consequently, we have to, as I call it intentionally, and I know that word is kind of overused at this point, but we have to intentionally plan our next chapters, and that's what this channel is all about. Um, so I'm just going to go through a few of the questions that I regularly get. The first one is my career. What was my career? Um, I'm like the poster child for a portfolio career. I started out in banking, started a division for Bank of America, stock loan division out of the trust department of Bank of America, and from there I became a stockbroker. And I was a stockbroker for many years. Love, love, love the investment business. Absolutely adore it. But I have to be quite honest with you. I am a terrible salesman. Terrible salesman. And so consequently, uh, the aspect of being a retail stockbroker, I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed the taking care of clients. So I should have been a relationship manager of some kind, which is what stockbrokers actually evolved into. That's why they're called financial advisors today. So from there, I actually got married, married my ex husband, had my daughter, um, retired from the brokerage industry, and went back to school, got a master's in education, and I taught sixth grade, math specifically, but sixth grade in middle school for a couple of years, and but things just didn't work out. The marriage was very difficult from the beginning, and so I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next. Um, the marriage was holding together, and that is when I decided to go into coaching. I had spent an incredible amount of time coaching my ex-husband, if you want to know the truth, as he moved up within a private company. My business experience, I think, was very helpful to him, and actually formed the foundation to our friendship in many ways because it was something we both enjoyed. Um, Yes, and so from business coaching, executive coaching, post divorce, I actually, while I was getting a divorce, I got a master's in mental health counseling, thinking I was going to be a therapist. And actually, I didn't want to be a therapist. I didn't want to deal with those kind of problems. I wanted to be a coach, a career coach. And so I went to work. So I was an executive coach in the work environment, primarily C-suite environment, and I moved into higher education. Moved to Boston, um, and yeah, I worked for a number of universities here in Boston: MIT, Northeastern, Tufts. Loved it. Absolutely loved the students. Loved working with the students, not within the realm of higher education. I'm a little too much of an outlier to fit into an institutional structure like that. And yeah, and that's about the time I moved to Paris. I decided to leave higher education. I had the divorce was final. Um, there were lots and lots of family struggles, which I won't go into. I have talked about in a number of different YouTube episodes, podcast episodes, and I crazily purchased an apartment in Paris, and I really did the 90 days in, 90 days out, which is what you have to do when you're on a just a regular visitor's visa. I never applied for a resident visa at all, and that's partially because I still had a life in the US. I still had family in the US. My son was in Minneapolis, and those grandchildren, and therefore it wasn't like I could move entirely like so many people. So anyways, everything progressed. COVID happened, I should say. I started the magazine Extraordinary Women, and because the coaching business during the COVID time period really ended, and I really had not put a whole lot of thought into what was my market for the magazine, and consequently, it was not a success. I have to be quite honest. It was successful from the standpoint, and this is something for you to think about in your next chapter. It was something for me to try on. It was something for me to experience. I interviewed just fascinating women because it was all about women who or interviews with women who really had done some major pivot in their lives, whether it was starting a nonprofit after getting breast cancer, or moving to Paris and starting a cooking school, or doing tours in Paris, or whatever it might be. Someone, a Parisian who started cooking classes in her home. It was wonderful. The experience of interviewing those people was absolutely wonderful, but it was not a profitable magazine. And because of all my coaching experience, and then the trial of the magazine, the person I was working with in the US that was actually helping me to publish the magazines said, Sharri, there's a book in you. And that is when I wrote the book, Design Your Fabulous Next Chapter. I should get you the book. That would make the most sense, wouldn't it? Anyways, that gives you kind of a broad perspective of this crazy, crazy portfolio career. I also get a lot of people who ask me why Paris, and I think it sounds really crazy, but subconsciously I wanted to feel like a woman again, and I think the divorce was 3 years long. I mentioned that my former husband and I really had a kind of friendship more than I think two lovers. And so I went to Paris on a crazy whim, and it was with Jamie Cat Callan, who's a wonderful author, very fun author. And she did a tour called the Ooh La La Tour. And as I always say, there was no ooh la laing for me, but the tour was amazing. And for the first time in a very long time, I actually felt like a woman. And I felt proud, even though I was over 50. I felt proud of being a woman over 50. And so Paris helped me to fall in love with myself again, and helped me to fall in love with being feminine again. And that sounds really crazy, but it's true. It really did. Um, I had spent a lot of time in London prior to my divorce. My ex husband loved London, but I couldn't go back. Sometimes we have to shut the door on a former chapter and move to a new chapter. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with turning the page. I think I watched the last Downton Abbey movie last night. Mrs. Patmore The cook, just so you know, if you've never watched Downton Abbey, um, makes a comment, something about the fact that we need to be comfortable with um, turning the page of a chapter and starting anew. And actually, I think that's what Paris represented for me. So I fell in love with Paris in this Ooh La La tour, and I started going back. I was still working in higher education, and so I went back as often as I could, and I ended up, I made what was then a good friend, who was an expat who lived in Paris. And actually, with her help and the help of a lot of other people, I had a French attorney, the whole thing, I ended up buying a Paris apartment. And it was wonderful. It was a wonderful experience. It was a hard experience, and it was hard because I am not fluent in French. I don't speak French. I have great difficulty understanding French conversations. I can read French reasonably well. I've taken French. I don't have that part of the brain to learn a second language, unfortunately. So it was hard, but yet it was good. So, how many times do we have experiences in our life that are hard and good? Lots, I think. I sold my apartment rather recently, and the reason I sold my apartment, that's another question I get all the time. Why did you sell your Paris apartment? And I sold it because I have a daughter who I was estranged from for a number of years. She was married to a very abusive man. I did not know that. She basically cut me out of her life, and so that was why Paris worked. It no longer worked when she finally left him and needed my help. And so consequently, I sold my Paris apartment, and I still live in Boston though, and I go back to Minneapolis to help my daughter about 1 week a month. And so consequently, it didn't work going back and forth between Boston and Paris. It couldn't, as you can imagine. So that's why I sold it. Again, another chapter, another chapter. Is Paris still a part of my life? People ask that question all the time. Absolutely. It's Paris healed me in so many ways and really allowed me to step into being a woman again and being a woman of a certain age, because it's very different. How I think the French culture views older women than the American culture. I'm an American, and so the American culture. I don't know what it's like for the rest of you that maybe are living in a culture, or your homeland is not America, but this is a very youth-oriented culture, and therefore it's sometimes very hard to be a woman of a certain age. Um, so, what are some of the other questions? I talked about our next chapters because people have asked me numerous times, why did you focus on women 50 plus, and why did you direct the book towards women of a certain age? And it really is because, like I said in the very beginning, we could have 20 years, 30 years after we retire from our formal careers, or end up with an empty nest. And the question is, what are we going to do with it? You know, women are working, everyone is working longer, because they see those potential 3 decades in advance ahead of them. Um, but also, we want it to be wonderful. We want it to be fantastic. We don't want to just exist. Um, and so that's what the book is all about. Actually, I'm doing a book launch on Tuesday night, which I hopefully will share with you over on my new YouTube channel on the regular episodes. But it's really talking about what, not only the book, but what are you going to do with your next chapter? And the book can actually help you to do that. The book can help you because it's 7 steps that takes you through the process of you kind of evaluating, first going into dreamland, and then evaluating where you are, what's important to you, what's on your dream list? What do you need to try on? And then start to actually more concisely figure out what your next chapter plan is going to be all about. And in order to do that, you have to try some things on. I equate it to going in the dressing room. You bring in all kinds of clothes, and 3/4 of them you would never purchase because when you try them on, they don't fit. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. And that the same is true of our next chapters. So let's see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I think pops up on a regular basis. The one thing I do get an awful lot of feedback on is the fact that I share a lot. I don't reveal names typically, try not to, but I do share a lot. And I've had a messy life, as many of us have. Yeah, as soon as you start sharing honest conversations with people about what goes on in your life or what has gone on in your life, you hear their stories too, because it opens the door to honesty versus maybe Instagram perfection or even YouTube perfection. The realities of life, everyone's lives, is that life is hard. But we get stronger and better because of the hard times. Truly, and in some ways you can hardly even remember all of the good times, but goodness, you sure remember the hard times, right? And that's your message, that the hard times and the people who hurt you, even, or the people that you hurt, the relationships you had to walk away from, the relationships that ended, those are what grew you as a person. And then you take all of that, where you are today, at whatever your age is, those of you that are watching, and and you take it to the next level, and figure out, what am I going to do in my next chapter. So I will leave you with this little trial of my live streaming. I'm going to try to do another live next Friday, and the next Friday I'm going to have a guest on. Her name is Annie, and she runs Vive Wellness. Check out my YouTube channel and you can see the preview listed. But Annie is amazing. She's a Canadian who has worked with women and health, women's wellness for quite a period of time. And Annie is going to address all the issues, some of the issues anyways, the biggest issues that we have as women 50 plus, and even for some of you men, I think it could be beneficial. So join us next Friday. Also, if you're thinking, is this channel right for me? Do I want to invest in listening to Sharri, and let her into my life on a weekly basis? I want you to think about being a young woman, or a young girl even, and think about, what were your dreams? What did you want to be? What did you imagine when you were that little girl, 12 years old, going to the library or going to the grocery store, getting candy, reading 17 magazine, later on, even when you were in high school? What did you dream of being? And if you can connect with her and you think about, where did she go? How can I bring her back? How can I reconnect with her? Then this is the channel for you. Because this channel is really about connecting to who we are, which is both the 12-year-old as well as the 60-year-old, and everything that occurred in between. But we're not so different. We have, no matter how many experiences we've had, we are not so different from that little 12-year-old that had all kinds of dreams. We really aren't. Some of them are put on the shelf, some of them are pushed away, but it's time to get them off the shelf, out of the closet, so to speak, and bring them into your life. And if that resonates with you, come join this channel. Join me in this channel and every place I take you and everyone that I bring on the channel. So thank you for joining me on this Sunday afternoon or Sunday morning or Sunday evening, depending upon where you are. Take care, everyone. A biento.